I have been driving for a regional delivery service for almost 3 years now, and most nights are boring in the best possible way. You learn the roads, you learn which houses have dogs that bark at nothing, you learn which porches have motion lights that trip if a moth flies past. Boring is good. Boring means you get home, you eat something reheated, you sleep. But there was one night that broke that pattern for me completely, and I still think about it more than I would like to admit. It was late October, and I was finishing the last route of the night. My shift was supposed to end at 10, but there was one final package that had been rerouted to me because the driver before me called off sick. The address came up on my screen a little after 10:30, and when I typed it into the GPS, the estimated arrival time made my stomach drop a little. 22 minutes, most of it on unpaved road, ending at a driveway that the map showed as almost a kilometer long, cutting through dense trees before it reached the house. I remember sitting in the van for a second, just staring at that little dotted line stretching off into nothing. I had delivered to rural addresses before, so this wasn't unheard of. But something about doing it that late, alone, with no other houses anywhere near the pin, made me hesitate before I pulled out of the lot. The drive out there was quiet in a way that felt heavier than normal quiet. No other cars. No streetlights once I left the main road. Just my headlights, cutting through trees that leaned in close enough that their branches sometimes scraped against the top of the van. My phone had 1 bar of signal, then none. I remember thinking, if something happens to me out here, nobody is going to know for hours. When I finally reached the driveway, the GPS told me to turn, and for a second I almost didn't. The opening between the trees looked barely wide enough for the van, and it curved almost immediately so I couldn't see where it led. But I had a job to do, so I turned in. The drive down that driveway felt like it took longer than the 22 minutes the GPS had estimated for the entire trip. Trees pressed in on both sides, thick enough that my headlights barely reached past them. The road was gravel, uneven, and every bump made the boxes in the back shift and knock against each other. I kept glancing at the GPS to make sure I was still on the right path. Because there were no house lights visible yet, nothing to aim for except a blinking dot on a screen. Finally, the trees opened up into a wide clearing, and there it was. A single house, 2 stories, with lights on in what looked like the living room and a light on the porch. No car in the driveway. No garage that I could see. Just the house, sitting alone in that clearing like it had been dropped there and left. I parked, grabbed the package, and walked up to the porch. The whole time, I had this feeling like I was being watched, which I chalked up to nerves, because being alone in the middle of nowhere at 11 at night will do that to anyone. I set the package down by the door, snapped my photo for confirmation, and turned to walk back to the van. That's when the porch light went out. I stopped walking. I turned back toward the house. And it wasn't just the porch light. Every light I had seen from the driveway, the living room window, all of it was dark now. The entire house had gone black, all at once, like someone had flipped a single switch for the whole property. I didn't wait to figure out why. I walked fast back to the van, got in, and pulled the door shut behind me. My hands were already reaching for the ignition when I heard it. A knock. On the back window of the van, not a tap. A solid, deliberate knock, like knuckles against glass. Right behind my seat where there was no door. No window I could see through from the front. Nothing but the solid back panel of the van. I didn't turn around. I don't know why, looking back, I didn't turn around. But in that moment, my whole body just wanted to move. I started the engine, threw it into reverse, and got out of that driveway, faster than I probably should have on gravel that uneven. I didn't look in the mirror once. I didn't stop until I hit the main road again and had full signal on my phone. I told myself it was a branch, a bird, something falling off the roof of the van and settling against the back panel with a sound that only sounded like knuckles because I was already spooked. I told myself that the whole way home, and mostly, by the time I got back, I believed it. The next morning, my dispatcher called me before my shift even started. "Hey, quick question about last night," she said. "The customer on Cutter Hollow Road is saying they never got their package. Says it was left at the house next door instead." I told her that couldn't be right. There was no house next door. I remembered the drive clearly. The long driveway, the clearing, one house standing alone with nothing around it for what felt like miles. She said the customer was insistent. Said their actual house was another quarter-mile past where I had stopped. Past a fork in the driveway I apparently never took. And that whoever's porch I had left the package on wasn't them. I pulled up the delivery address on my phone once I got to the lot, opened it on the map, and looked at it properly for the first time in daylight. According to the GPS pin, according to the route I had driven, there had only ever been one house at the end of that driveway. That's what the system showed. That's what I had seen with my own eyes the night before. So on my break, out of nothing but a bad feeling I couldn't shake, I pulled up satellite view instead of the regular map. And there at the end of that same driveway, the imagery clearly showed two rooftops. Not one, two, separated by maybe 80 feet of trees. Close enough that from the ground in the dark, with the tree cover as thick as it was, you would never know the second one was there at all. I sat in the van for a long time after that, just looking at those two rooftops on my screen. The first house, the one closer to the road, the one I now realized I had never actually delivered to. The second, tucked further back, wrapped almost completely in tree cover. The one where the actual customer said they'd been waiting all night for a package that never came. I zoomed in as far as the image would let me. The first house, the one with the lights, the one with the porch I had stood on, didn't show a single vehicle in the driveway in the satellite image either. No car, nothing. Just the roof and the shape of a small clearing around it that from the road would have looked exactly like the house I remembered walking up to. I never asked to go back out there. When the schedule came out for the following week and I saw that stretch of road on someone else's route, I didn't say anything. I just let it stay that way. I've been doing this job long enough to know that some deliveries you don't ask questions about. You just make sure they're never yours again. I still don't know who or what was in that house with the lights on. I don't know why the customer's actual home is the one buried in the trees, invisible from the road, while the one closest to us, the one that looked normal enough to walk right up to, isn't supposed to be occupied at all. All I know is that somebody or something knocked on the back window of my van that night, in a spot where there was nothing to knock with, and I have never once looked back to check what it was. By the time I accepted my last delivery, it was already after 10:30 at night. The route only had one stop left, one package, one signature. What should have taken less than a minute became the only delivery I have ever reported directly to the police. It was a slow drizzle that night, the kind that doesn't really soak you, but coats everything in this thin, cold film. I remember being grateful the last stop wasn't far. Just a short drive down a rural road, with maybe 3 houses total, spaced far enough apart that none of them could see each other's porch lights. The address came up small on my screen, a modest single-story house set back from the road. Porch light on. No car in the driveway. Nothing unusual, at least not yet. The package required a signature, which meant I couldn't just leave it on the step and walk away like I did with most deliveries. It had to go into someone's actual hands, and I needed their name typed into the handheld device before I could mark the route complete. I grabbed the package, walked up under the drizzle, and raised my hand to knock. I never got the chance. The door opened before my knuckles touched it, like whoever was inside had been standing right there, watching me walk up. A man stepped out onto the porch. He looked to be somewhere in his 50s, dressed like he'd just been sitting around the house. Nothing special about his clothes. What struck me immediately was his face. No smile, no greeting, nothing. He just looked at me and then looked at the package in my hands and held out his arm. "That's mine," he said. I told him I just needed his signature and held out the handheld device toward him. He stared at it for a few seconds like I'd handed him something he didn't understand. And then he said quietly, "You don't need that. I've done this job long enough to know that people sometimes get impatient with the signature requirement. So I explained, the way I always do, that the company requires it for high-value packages, that I can't release it without a name entered into the system." That's when his whole expression changed. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something closer to alarm, like I had said something that put him in a difficult position. He took a step closer to me, not aggressively, but enough that the distance between us shrank in a way that made my stomach tighten. "Give me the package," he said again, flatter this time, like he was done asking nicely. I held my ground, mostly because I didn't know what else to do. "Aye, sir," I said. "I just need your name and signature." "That's all?" He glanced over his shoulder, back toward the house. The way you check to make sure a door was actually closed behind you. Then he turned back to me and leaned in slightly, and in a low voice, almost a whisper, he said, "You shouldn't be here." Before I could even process what that meant, a woman's voice cut through the drizzle from somewhere inside the house. Sharp, loud, frightened. "Who's outside?" The man's face changed instantly. Whatever composure he'd been holding onto broke apart in a second. He lunged forward, grabbed the package right out of my hands before I could react, and took off, not through the front door behind him, but around the side of the house into the dark, disappearing along the wall where the porch light didn't reach. I stood there for a moment, just trying to catch up with what had happened, and then the front door opened again. A woman stepped out. Late 50s maybe, wrapping a cardigan tighter around herself, looking at me with total confusion. "Can I help you?" she asked. I didn't know what to say at first. I just stood there, still holding the now empty signature device, rain collecting on the screen. "I'm waiting for an Amazon package," she said, when I didn't respond fast enough. "A man just took it," I told her. He came out, said it was his, and then ran off around the side of the house when you called out. Her face went pale in a way I have never forgotten. Not startled. Pale, like the blood had actually left her face in real time. "What man?" she said. I pointed toward the side of the house where he disappeared into the dark. There was nothing there. No movement, no sound, just the wet grass and the tree line a little further back, swallowed in shadow. She didn't ask any more questions. She went back inside immediately, and I heard her voice shaking already on the phone. I stood on that porch in the drizzle, not sure whether to leave or wait, until I heard sirens in the distance. Police arrived about 15 minutes later. 2 officers, then a third. They asked me to describe the man in detail, which I did as best I could, though looking back, I realized I couldn't tell them much beyond his general age and the fact that his expression never changed the entire time except for that one moment of panic. They walked the side yard with flashlights, out toward the small patch of forest behind the property. That's where they found the footprints. In the wet ground behind the house, clear enough to photograph, a set of prints leading away from the porch, cutting through the grass, heading straight toward the tree line. And then, right at the edge of the trees, they simply stop. No footprints continuing into the woods. No footprints doubling back. There was no fence back there, no road, no clear way out that didn't involve walking straight into dense forest that, according to the officers, didn't even connect to anything for over a mile in any direction. They searched that tree line for close to an hour. Nobody was found that night. Not in the woods, not on the neighboring properties, nowhere. A few days later, Amazon reached out to me directly, which almost never happens. They told me the package that had been taken contained a laptop worth more than $1,000, and that it had never been recovered, never resurfaced anywhere. The police theory, as it was explained to me, was that the man had likely been watching the house for some time, possibly aware of the delivery schedule, waiting for an opportunity like this one. That explanation almost made sense to me, until I heard the last detail. The homeowner had doorbell camera footage covering the entire porch, When the police reviewed it, the recording showed me walking up to the house, standing at the door, holding out the signature device. It showed me talking, gesturing toward the empty space where he had been standing. It did not show him, not for 1 second. No man opening the door, no man reaching for the package, no man running around the side of the house. Just me, alone on the porch, appearing to talk to nobody and hand a package to empty air, before turning and walking back to my van. The homeowner swore up and down that she'd heard a man's voice through the door before she came out. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. The dispatcher who took my call that night, when I described the man before the police even arrived, said my description was so specific, she assumed he was already in custody. All three of us were certain in our own separate ways that this man had been standing on that porch. The camera disagreed with all of us. To this day, I still deliver packages. I still work the late routes because someone has to, and the pay is better after dark. But whenever a delivery requires a signature after the sun goes down, I have one rule I never break anymore. I wait for the customer to speak first. I let them say something before I say anything back. Because sometimes the person who opens the door isn't the one who was ever expecting the package.